Let's talk about recording audio narration into your digital storytelling piece. So if you're in photos or video, you want to tap on audio and then look in the lower right hand corner, go to the microphone, and you could test your levels really quickly just by talking and watching to see where the green bar moves. I'd suggest you put yourself in an area where you know you're not going to have any random sounds of siblings, your friends, a siren, weird bird calls, or the wind, because the iPad mic will pick up a lot around you. You choose your location. Once you're ready to record, tap the record button and you'll see that the iPad will give you a count in. And then you can just begin speaking normally, watching your audio travel, working from your storyboard, because that's going to make this so much easier and sound so much better. You've already had your images aligned, so you can just watch those travel by as you work on your piece. But here's the challenge, folks. How do you get everything to line up with the pictures? Well, I'm going to show you two different ways. But first, let's talk about stopping this audio. So I'll tap stop, and I get four choices. I can cancel, I can do a retake, I can review it to see if I like it, or I can just plain old accept. I'm going to accept. And now there's my audio in place. You do have some options when it comes to editing the audio as well. You can tap and drag and put it in a different place in your timeline. You can tap on it and make the audio track shorter if you want to do some trimming at either end by tapping on the left or right side and grabbing that yellow bar, excuse me, to make it shorter as needed. And you can also split it. If you tap on it and then look in the lower right hand corner, tap on the three little dots called ellipsis, and we can split it. Right wherever that playhead is, it's going to split it. Now when it comes to adjusting audio itself, you'll notice I can tap on now one of my two clips, use the volume, take a look at my tutorial on adding audio in general to see some of the other fun around speed and fade. Okay, but what we want to talk about today is how do we set this up to record so that it matches the sequence of your individual visual elements of your story. And that's what's going to come next. So the way I look at it, there are two ways to record your narrative piece for your digital story. And I'm going to run through both right now, and then we'll talk about the pros and cons. Let's start with option A. Option A is going to involve I've got my visuals in place in the order that I want, but I haven't bothered to set their duration at all. I don't know how long I want shot 1, the aerial photo of the house, to go, shot 2, the street view photo, shot 3, the stable, etc. I don't know how long I want them to run for. What I need to do is to record the audio to see. So I've got my storyboard out. I'm just going to record one long stream of audio, and then we'll sort out how we want to make this happen. So once again, lower right hand corner, microphone. I am ready to record. Countdown. And I'd like to begin today with a story about my grandparents' house, and the stable, and the horse, and my dad, and a horseshoe. The stable was out behind the house on Parkland Drive in Suitland. It was a separate stable that later on would house a tractor, but long before I was born, it had a horse. The horse's name is lost to me, but the relationship it had to my father is not, because it was his job every morning to go out and feed the horse. And one morning, he went out to feed the horse, and he was a little bit more tired than usual. Now my story goes on from here, but you've listened to enough. I'm going to pause, or I'm going to stop my recording. I'll accept it. Thanks for listening to the story, by the way. And so here's what I've got going on. I've got one long audio track. It's almost a minute long. And The challenge that I have is that it's hard for me to tell without hitting play
And I'd like to begin today with a story.
and listening to know where that begins, where those individual segments begin and end within my story so that I can then adjust the visuals accordingly. So what I'm going to have to do is, again, listen.
The stable was out behind the house on Parkland Drive.
Okay, so now I'm talking about the stable. So I'm going to drag back.
Was out behind the house.
Okay, I want to get to about here.
The stable.
Okay, it's probably right about there.
And Drive in Suitland. It was.
So, do you see the challenge I have? It's hard to know where exactly everything begins and ends so that I can get the stable shot to line up when I start talking about the stable.
It was a separate stable.
So, that's a challenge. Here's the method that I prefer. I'm going to delete that track. Again, I've got my storyboard in front of me, and I'm going to record just the audio that goes with frame 1 from my storyboard, the overhead shot of the house. Here we go. Check it out. My dad grew up in a home in Suitland, Maryland that my grandfather had built with his own 2 hands. Okay, so that's what I want to show for the first clip. Now I'm ready to record the audio that I want to have appear from the street, underneath the street view when we listen to it. So again, we go to audio, we're going to record.
Two hands.
The house was 2 stories, set back on a pretty good sized parcel. All right, so I'm adjusting for the second clip. And now we're on to part 3. Are you with me? You see how this is going? So now it's time to record the audio for part 3. And I'm still going from my storyboard that I'm looking at while I record. Behind the house was an old stables. And believe it or not, so close to Washington, D.C., that's where my dad's family kept a horse. So what I'm doing, and I'm going to call it quits after this, I think you get my point, is that I'm recording in segments. And then I am stretching each visual so that it is matching exactly where I want it to fall within the course of each chunk of narration that I've added.
My dad grew up in a home in Suitland, Maryland that my grandfather had built with his own 2 hands. The house was 2 stories, set back on a pretty good sized parcel. Behind the house was an old.
Now, this is a lot easier method for me. Plus, it gives me the advantage of if I realize that I totally butchered one of the tracks, I don't have to go through and find it. If I didn't do a good job with the track for the second visual, I could delete it entirely. I can cruise in and shorten it. I can split it. I can use all of my editing tricks that are available in iMovie to make it happen. And it's far better. So in summary, I think your best option, friends, is to follow your storyboard pretty religiously. Visual 1, record. Visual 2, record. Visual 3, record. And keep going until you've laid down all the tracks for your piece. Then you can come back in after you have everything sequenced and add any sound effects or music, or even re-record a segment if you want. It's going to be a lot easier to rearrange. Thanks for sticking with me. Check out the other tutorials related to creating a digital story in iMovie for iOS and the iPad. And thanks again for watching. What a great audio.